let's keep talking politics here with our friend, political analyst Brian Sobel, and he joins me. Brian, good to see you. We won't make you opine on the harms or benefits of TikTok, but I know you have a lot of thoughts as we kind of approach this threshold later tonight. Biden has already crossed it. He is now his party's presumptive nominee. He's gotten enough delegates, and Trump will follow and do just that a little bit later tonight when we get some of these results and delegate math numbers in from both Washington State and Hawaii. So, Brian, you and I have been talking all year. I think it's safe to say we're now in general election mode, are we not?
We are, and it's the rematch. It's the rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and as we like to say, game on at this point, Andrew, because now it's one-on-one, and the American public have a decision to make.
You know, when you talk about this rematch, you know, this is for political and American history nerds. It doesn't happen very often. I believe the last time incumbents have faced off against each other and former presidents themselves was back in 1956. And so this is somewhat of a treat for, you know, those who follow political history. But let's talk about how, you know, significant and worthwhile this is. Let's talk about the liabilities that each candidate has. Let's start with Trump. What are his liabilities going into the general election?
Biggest liability for Donald Trump is that between now and the election, he cannot govern his own talking about other people, diminishing other people. He has to become a presidential candidate. He's got to speak to the issues. He's got to provide solutions, and he would be well advised to drop a lot of the rhetoric, the name calling, which, frankly, in the 6 months leading up to the last election against Joe Biden, he could not stay off Twitter, now X, and that really cost him. It really did. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has to convince the American people that he has the vigor and the stamina and the cognitive ability to become president for another 4 years. These are unique circumstances with both of these candidates. They both have things to overcome, but the American public is not going to have, the voters, not going to have but two choices. And they're either going to go one way or the other, or they're going to sit it out or vote for a third-party candidate, whoever that may be, RFK or Jr. Or somebody. But this is going to come down to Donald Trump and Joe Biden again.
Yeah, you know, Brian, when you talk about the liabilities, let's focus on Trump because you talk about all of the legal cases pending against him. For much of the primary, they kind of existed as somewhat of a theoretical. And then we started getting the settlements in the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit and in the New York civil fraud trial as well. So they became very, very real. But those were civil judgments. The criminal trials still kind of exist in the imagination, theoretically speaking. They're going to be put to the test later this month, the first one starting there in New York, Lower Manhattan, the hush money payment trial Alvin Bragg brought against Trump there. So, you know, we could be talking in a month, in 2 months' time where, you know, the prospect of Donald Trump as a convicted felon is no longer a hypothetical.
True. At the same time, Donald Trump's base doesn't really believe in what's going on here. They look at the civil situation, the huge settlement against Donald Trump and his business activities in New York, Georgia, other places, and they're basically discounting it. They basically are siding with Trump on the idea that this is manufactured to keep him off the ballot, number one, but that's not going to happen. But that somehow this will affect him in the general election. But, you know, his base has not been moved, Andrew, as we know, by any of these charges. And so Donald Trump, for his part, he's going to forge ahead. Now, from the Joe Biden camp, Joe Biden has to keep the pressure on Donald Trump vis-a-vis national media and other ways of reaching out, social media, to keep suggesting to the American public that reelecting Donald Trump sets up a situation where you may have a convicted person, but more than that, that all of these cases combined indicate that this is a candidate at this point who should not reassume the presidency of the United States. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth between now and November.
Yeah, you're looking at the delegate tracker right now. So polls close in about 45 minutes in Washington State. There are 43 delegates at stake there right now. So I'm not going to do math live. That's never a good idea. But he has 1,185 right now. He needs 1,215. There are 43 at stake in Washington. So we'll wait for that race to be called as well. Brian, let's talk about President Biden, though. You and I last spoke the night of the State of the Union last Thursday. And I had asked you whether or not, he was so animated, he was so kind of invigorated, trying to maybe allay some of these fears about his age and his stamina. Now we're almost 1 week removed from that. Did it work? And to your point, Biden's going to have to get out there on the campaign trail. If his schedule is not as heavy and is a little lighter than, say, Trump's reelection campaign schedule, that's going to be kind of put right to each other. I mean, it's going to be a direct comparison, is it not, as we get into the general...
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. If he isn't meeting with the media, if he isn't doing sit-down interviews with the media, if he finds some way to not debate Trump, that will reflect poorly on him. So he's got a lot of important decisions to make, and the people around him have a lot of important decisions to make about how they make sure that the American public feel that Joe Biden can, again, for 4 years, lead this country. I think it's a big challenge. When we talked last, at the State of the Union last Thursday, I thought that he did not do a great job in the State of the Union speech. A lot of shouting, frothing, all of that, and I don't know that he convinced people that he is better suited after last Thursday to be the candidate than where we are today. And it draws me back, Andrew, to the announcement in March of 1967 by Lyndon Baines Johnson that he was not going to seek the nomination. That ended up with Hubert Humphrey, as we know from history, and Richard Nixon took care of him, and 4 years later drubbed, decimated George McGovern, and that's history. And so you look back at that, and you'll recall from history that it was March, and right. Johnson said, "I will not seek the nomination," echoing what happened in 1884 very much with General Tecumseh Sherman, William Tecumseh Sherman, who said, "I will not seek and will not, I will not serve if I'm elected president of the United States."
Okay.
So we're kind of at an interesting juncture here. The Democrats, if they're looking at the polling and everything else, there's a very slight chance that they may say, "Hey, we're not going to beat Donald Trump and we have to take a different decision," but I don't see that happening.
Okay, but so you're saying there's a chance or not a chance? Because I've been asking folks like yourself, Brian, this question all day. Has that option, especially for those who love American history, has that option, and reporters who cover these campaigns, has it foreclosed itself after tonight? Yes, Lyndon Baines Johnson did that in late March. He didn't want to run for a second term over his handling of the Vietnam War. We
Right.
know how history panned out from there. But this is purely about, Biden's, physical stamina and his age, things that you can't control, really. And so, are you sensing that, come convention this summer in Chicago, that someone else could accept the nomination? Because I've been trying to kind of suss out whether or not this storyline is still going to be alive after tonight. Is it?
I think it's going to be less alive, but okay. I bring it up because we study American history, and conventions make decisions based on their ability to win. And so if we go along for another couple of months here and the president is missing in action, has some additional missteps and that sort of thing, there may be some pressure. It's a very small chance,
okay.
But we have to mention it because history is history.
History is a guide. You're right. Brian, last question, though. Let's put Trump and Biden aside. What about the third-party elements in the 2024 election? I'm talking no labels. I'm talking Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm talking Cornel West. I think the question about whether or not any of these entities are going to be spoilers for either Biden or Trump, those questions got ever more real, I think, tonight. Do you agree?
To some extent, yes,
Okay.
you're right about that. But again, I always look at history and look at third-party candidates, and the one that jumps to mind immediately is Ross Perot. Ross Perot spoiled the opportunity of George Herbert Walker Bush to beat Bill Clinton. And if you'll recall, Bill Clinton, this little-known governor from Arkansas, who took on a race that nobody else in the country wanted to take on for the Dems, he pressed on the issue of the economy. And coming off the of taking Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, George Herbert Walker Bush had an approval rating of 90%, and he still ended up losing. So, American history teaches us, if nothing else, that you can have spoilers. Now, in the case of Robert Kennedy Jr., he started out, getting people's attention. That's been on the wane, and I think it'll continue to be on the wane. And I'm not sure that there's anybody who can jump in. So it isn't going to be a Ross Perot hitting nearly 20%.
Okay.
It's going to be much less than that. So I'm not sure that any of these third-party candidates, or say Manchin decided to
Sure.
run on a no-name party. I don't know that it's significant enough to affect the election.
Yeah, because we know the group No Labels, I believe, is holding somewhat of their own kind of presidential convention later this month. They do anticipate to put forward a slate. We don't know who it's going to be.
Right.
But they can do that. Robert F. Kennedy can do that. Cornel West can do that. It's about getting enough signatures and support to actually get on general election ballots in states. So if you can only get on the ballot in, say, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 states, it really does kind of diminish the significance of your run there as well. I only asked because I was seeing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in some polling, kind of hovering around 10, 12, 13%,
Right.
which is high for a third-party run. And so I wondered whether or not that was going to impact anything at all here. Brian Sobel, we got to leave it at that. Always fun talking politics. We'll talk soon, my friend. Thanks.
Absolutely. Have a great night, Andrew.
Thank you.